Hello, everybody. It's Friday, and we hope it's drama free. That's the plan. Good to see you today. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining me. It is a beautiful fall day here. Absolutely stunning fall day. And we are enjoying sunshine, and the leaves are changing color here, and it is just remarkable. And I don't know what the temperature is. I'll look. Hey, Dorothy, you're the first one here today. Good to see you. Yeah, it's almost 60 degrees here, which is very comfortable. You know, light jacket for those of us who are a little cold-natured. So it is beautiful here, absolutely beautiful. Anyway, happy Halloween. That is the holiday that we're looking at here. Happy Halloween. Yeah. So it's a big deal in the U.S. People dress up, take their kids trick-or-treating and do all the things. And yeah, I'm okay with not having little kids to do that with now. I'm okay with that. So your clocks went back last week, so you're still out of sync. Yeah, that will happen to us this weekend. So our clocks change time on Sunday morning. So yeah, it is a little bit to get used to, isn't it? It really is. Takes a minute. It takes a minute to make the adjustment. For me, this adjustment is not as difficult as the other one, going the opposite way, where you lose time. When you gain some time, for me, it's not quite as difficult, except I really do hate, personally, the evening when it gets so dark so early. I don't like that much. True, Dorothy, but doesn't seem to matter how you feel about it. They still do it here. Hey, Julie. Hi, Terry. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, Halloween's not my favorite. It's not my favorite holiday, but it's what it is. You know? It's good to see you guys. Thanks for joining me. Happy Halloween. I just prefer to embrace it as just a fun time for candy and costumes, and then let the rest of it go. Anyway, so I thought what I would show you first of all is I have been going through my room. I mean, eventually I will get settled to where I know where things are and know what part of the house my stuff is in. It's a very upending, unsettling kind of thing to go through this move. I think it would be that way at any age. I think it's a little harder at the age that I am, but I don't know. I could just be making that up. I don't really know. Anyway, in the attempt to get things settled and know where things are and really well organized, because that's what I need to do in order to be able to find my stuff quickly, to put my hands on things quickly when I'm streaming and doing class prep and stuff like that. I found my pumpkins, and I thought, I'll show you the pumpkins, because it's been a while since we've talked about the pumpkins. This is from a stream from like 8 years ago, and it's still on YouTube. It is still on YouTube. And so this is one of those pumpkins, those fake pumpkins that doesn't look too bad. I mean, it looks kind of realistic. I got these at Hobby Lobby. This was one of the off-white ones. And so this one I got. And then I had another one that was orange. I had two of these that were this color. And I had an orange one. The orange one I ended up donating to Goodwill. And the other white one I did also. So this was all sectioned off. Well, it's sectioned off. Had some sections that you can kind of see up here. And then I resectioned off some of the other bigger areas. So it was sort of evenly sectioned off. And then the pattern work is all done with Sharpie markers, just plain old Sharpies, like the fine point, which in my opinion is not really a fine point. And there may be a little ultra fine, but most of this is just going to be the fine point Sharpie. And Zentangle designs, Zentangle patterns. And I chose easy ones that I could do while I was talking, because I'm not always that. Zentangle takes some concentration, and so I used patterns that were easy to do, things that I could do while I was thinking and having to think and talk and control cameras and all that all at the same time. Then I think some of these dots and things, as I recall, I think those were just to fill in patterns. And then I shaded it, and I don't really know what I shaded it with. I'd have to go back and watch the video. It's probably graphite from the looks of it. Could have been charcoal, but it's one or the other, I think. Anyway, and then when it was all done, I think I probably gave it a spray coat of Krylon Spray Matte Finish 1311. And then probably gave it a brush coat of varnish, but because it's fairly shiny. I don't know. Anyway, hello Marilyn. So this was a fun project, and like I said, it's on YouTube from about 8 years ago, and I don't know if this one is on there. I don't remember. I didn't go back and rewatch the video. But anyway, it is back there. It's back in the archives somewhere. So there's that one. So I just thought I would show that to you. I unearthed that this week, and I thought, I'll just put it out. So I did. This is one of my favorite patterns. I love the graphic nature of that. It is different, of course, trying to do this under a camera and do it with Sharpies on a round, uneven surface. So it has its own challenges. But from a distance, it looks great. It really does. I like this pattern and this one. So I tried to use patterns that were more linear, followed by one that was more graphic. Linear, graphic, linear, linear, graphic. So I have two linear patterns here together for whatever reason. Anyway, I like it. I like it quite a bit. So the other one I did with colorful, the colorful Sharpies in the same tip, the fine tip, which, like I said, is not really fine, but you know, that's what they call it, fine point. And I did designs in the colors, and after I got it done, I'm like, yeah, I don't like this very well. I much prefer it with the black and the cream pumpkin. But anyway, so keep your eye out if you're interested in something like that. Always look at things with different eyes to see what they could be. Maybe not what they are, but what they could be. It was $8.99. I just was getting a message on my computer here for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, I hope everything's okay. Oh, you did, Catherine. Good to see you. This one, it was, like I said, it was like $8.99, and then they were 50% off. So I don't even know how they can sell things for that amount of money, right? Hi, Starla. I froze for a minute. Okay. Hi, Linda. That's probably what it was. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, everything looks like it's okay on my end, so we'll just see what happens. Too many moving parts to be able to diagnose what the issue is. Anyway, the reason I bought this pumpkin stack, first of all, it's not real big. And secondly, I bought it for the facial expressions. And so again, look at things with different eyes, because if you can get something like this that's in a stack, we used to have those, they were called, what were those things called? They were sticks, they were resin reproductions that different carvers did, wood carvers did. I forgot what they were called. Anyway, they were studies of faces, studies of different parts of the face, like ears, and a whole stick and a whole string of noses, another stick that would have all the string of ears, mouths, that kind of thing. And then they had ones that were just heads, but they were carving things, and we had those for references, just for carving. They weren't anything about painting, but they were the carving. They look like me streaming, Dorothy. It looks just like me. Are we twinsies? So anyway, look at stuff like that if you have room for it, and get things like this. They're always good reference, always. You really can't copy them, but they're really good reference. I mean, even if you could copy them, it would be unusual if they looked exactly like the thing. So anyway, pumpkins. Halloween. And that's about as Halloween-esque as I get. When I lived in my house was a split foyer, which meant you came in the foyer and then you either went upstairs or downstairs until we added the middle level. And the first few years, I was okay with Halloween, and then I got real tired of it, because we had, in a neighborhood, lots of kids come trick and treat. And all I did was go up and down the steps, or I could sit on the steps, or sit in a chair and wait for the doorbell to ring. I finally got annoyed with that, and I decided, well, one year my son and his girlfriend sat down at the end of the driveway in lawn chairs and handed out candy with the kids coming down the street. So that worked great. Other years, I just got a big plastic pumpkin, filled it with candy, put it out on the front porch with a sign that says, "Happy Halloween, help yourself." And it was all good until some rotten kid stole the pumpkin. Whatever. So at that point I went, well, you shouldn't have ruined it. And that was the end of that. Anyway, some other things that I found I thought I would show you, that some of them, most of these things I have just had in boxes labeled with the various classes and things. And so some of these I'm just going to put up instead of having them boxed away or whatever. So I thought I would show you this one. And some of you may remember these. This was from a class that I did. I think it was I believe it was a VIP class that I did. It's been a while. I've slept since then. Anyway, this one is done using tea bag paper. So the background is tea bag paper done in a patchwork style, and it was dyed with coffee or tea with the papers. And then these were stamped. These are also tea bag papers. Those were stamped and colored. I don't know if I painted them, did them with colored pencils, did them with markers. I don't know. It's been too long ago. I can go back and find out, but it's too long ago. The background surface is Craftex. And this is Craftex back here, which is kind of a sort of a manufactured copy or manufactured fabric paper. You can launder it and so forth. It has some gold leaf in the background. A lot of free motion stitching, a lot of stitching that echoes the design. This is a hand-carved stamp. And this is wool felt for the backing, and so it can hang on a dowel or some sort of a stick from the yard or whatever. Anyway, so I just thought I would show you that. This is another one, very similar yet different. So these were painted, the sections of tea bag paper were created and then cut apart and then put on the background so that it looked, this one, not so much the creation of a continuous pattern, but this one is a continuous pattern. So this is part of that, you know, and so forth. Anyway, same kind of thing. So I just thought I would show those to you. And they're attached, the background is attached using King Tut thread, which is a variegated thread, which I love and I use all the time. And I love the evenness of the change of color. And that's one of the reasons that I love the King Tut thread so much. The background paper is, or the background craft text is different from this one to this one, so you can see how black frames something out versus using a color that picks up the coffee and tea staining. Anyway, so those are done. Those are a class. And so I just thought I would show them to you because I'm going to put them up in my room and not have to dig them out every time. I'm just going to have them on the wall. So if I have to, I'll pick up a camera and aim it at the wall and show it to you. These were, I have a whole flock of these in my room at the moment. I have a whole flock of chickens. Their combs are a little, their combs are not standing up as much as they should, simply because they've been crammed in a plastic bag. And I decided it was just silly to have them crammed in a plastic bag. So I'm going to get them out. These are from a cutter quilt. You can see the very worn spots. So on these, I did not, this is the same quilt I've been using for a long time. I did not try to patch any of the cutter quilt worn spots. I just simply made them, and I was just careful. So there you get a real good view of the worn out nature of this quilt, how well worn and how well loved it is. The tails are double prairie points. The combs are ultra suede. Could be felt, but they're ultra suede. And depending on where you cut from a quilt, if it has lots of variety of color, if it's kind of a scrappy quilt, then you can see the different looks. And then I use just different kinds of fabrics for their little tail feathers. But it's kind of fun to have a whole flock of chickens hanging around in my room. These will make good gifts to give to people, since I have an abundance of them, an abundance of chickens. And then this one was, I don't remember if I don't remember what I did on this one. I don't remember. Anyway, the fabric is different. The fabric, this has an additional seam on it. This fabric is a printed duck cloth, so it's kind of like a canvas. It's heavily textured. Different kinds of buttons. These have round buttons for eyes. These have the flat buttons for eyes. Little prairie points for the tail, and so forth. So anyway, I have a flock of chickens hanging around here. But I love these. And I have another one. I have one or two in my sewing room that somebody else made that I bought from them. Could live with your emotional support chicken? For sure they could. Yeah. So I think what I think what I recall is that they're stuffed with walnut shells, ground walnut shells. And the thing about a pincushion like this, see, here they are back in their bag. The thing with a pincushion like this is really it is a pin cushion, not a needle cushion. Because if you put a needle into this pin cushion, they're deep enough, even the small one is deep enough that that needle could penetrate inside the chicken. And then that becomes a problem because then you either can't get them out or they'll migrate all the way through, and then you pick it up one day and it stabs your hand from underneath, and that is no good. And then I wanted to show you these little origami type boxes that I had. Again, these are left from, or not left, but these are class samples, but I thought I would show them to you. And then I'm going to put them in service instead of having them hang out in a drawer or whatever. This particular class was a class like this. So this is just a don't have to match the pattern. Or this one teaching people how you can take a striped fabric and create a pattern from a striped fabric and how to do the matching thing. Alright, so you take it apart like so. So you gotta undo the lid. It has a button closure, button and ribbon closure. And then it opens like this. And it falls open like so. It's very bright on the camera, isn't it? But then you have, everything is padded, so you have places you can insert pins or needles. It has places where you can you can clip your clips onto it or stick spools of thread under the ribbons. Betty Egg White. Oh, that's funny. Nana's thumb is not working again. I'm sorry. And these are fun to do. It's all done by hand. Everything on this is done by hand. There may have been some glue involved because this has chipboard in it to support it. There may have been glue involved in that. Again, I don't remember because it's been a long time since I made these. Anyway, to put them back together, you just draw up the ribbon. And the ribbons go through little rings on each little section. And then if you want to hold the lid closed, you just put a little ribbon around your button. And this had a clock button on it because I like clocks. Anyway, so there's that one. And here is this one. This is a K facet fabric. This is one of my favorite fabrics. I do love this fabric so much. Much easier to do this one because you don't have to piece the top or the bottom. You don't have anything to match. And this is fabric in here. This is fabric that originally was white with black dots. And who can't like spots to go with spots, you know? And this was fabric that I painted. So, same thing. Ribbons to hold things. There's ribbons that act as the hinge. And so forth. So, anyway, there is that. I love this. I love this design. Many, I do mean many years ago, I took a class that was very similar to this, and then that pattern was no longer available, and so I didn't even have it anymore. And so I took my sample that I had and used it to create a pattern and make my own design from it. So anyway, so I thought I'd show you those. Dorothy did hers with gussets. That's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, there was it was some kind of, I mean, this was back like in the late 60s, early 70s. This was a long time ago. And you bought it as a kit. So the whole thing came as a kit, and so it had everything pre-cut and all that. So I changed the size, changed the it was an octagon like this, but I changed everything up a little bit so that it was much more like something that was, I could claim as my design and not a copy. Anyway, there's that. And this is a Chinese thread book, and I have 2 of these, so I'll keep one as a sample, and I will use another one. I'm going to put it into my hand stitching stuff. And so this is called a Chinese thread book. This is what it looks like from the top, the front, the back. And you can put ribbons on them. You can put a ribbon back here so you can tie it. You could put elastic on it. You could do whatever. This is a paper that is, I think it's Kozo paper, but I'm not, again, I'd have to look back at the pattern and stuff. But it is not your typical pattern. It has a lot, not your typical paper. It has a lot of cotton fibers in it. So it is much sturdier than like regular bond paper. Hey, Joan. So this is what it looks like. It is a little bit embossed. Has some metallic on it. Anyway, I bought this paper, several rolls of it, different patterns of it, at the hippie shop here in where I live. Yeah, it's a weird shop. You go down stairs that are very narrow and not necessarily even. You go down those steps, and they're very anti. And hopefully, if I freeze, I will be coming back because it's giving me weird messages today for some reason. So these little sections open up like this. Okay. And the theory is when you're doing your handwork, thanks, Terry. When you do your handwork and you have little bits of threads left over, if you want to keep them separated, then you put them in these little packages. Okay? So, I don't know if the freezing is coming from, I don't know where it's coming from. YouTube has been having some weird things lately. Hey, Barbara. So each one of these sections is an origami type of section. You just have to figure out how to unfold it. This hasn't been unfolded in several years. This is the other side of this paper. Okay, so that's one of the neat things about this paper. And I think that it was sold as gift wrap, is what I think this paper was sold for. But I wouldn't buy it for gift wrap. It's too expensive, and it's beautiful stuff. But anyway, so there's that one. Okay, so that layer is like that. And then the next layer opens up like this. And so the theory is that you can have all these little different compartments for putting thread tails, and it has to be YouTube. Okay, I hope so, because I'm not showing anything here that indicates I have any kind of problems from here. So anyway, so you have different compartments for your different little tails of of thread. And you know, there is a thing in the hand stitching world called an ort, like orts, or an ort jar, or an ort basket, or an ort bundle. And those are the leftover ends of thread that are too long to throw away, but they're too short to wind up and organize. And so something like this is great for organizing your little leftovers. So you have that one and this one. And let's see if this side, and this one, okay, see these open this way. This one opens to the top and the bottom of the book. So they just open differently. And of course you could label them and do all that stuff. But then the neat thing is that they fold back down. So that's the second layer. The next layer opens up into a bigger section. Now you could put things in here like bits of fabric. I mean, you can't do anything that's real big and bulky. I don't know why you would want to, but you know, you could have sequins maybe, or you know, packages of beads and things that you would use in handwork. And this side opens the same way. Okay, so it has two more sections that way. And then it opens one more time into a great, whoop, okay, camera did not like that, into a great big container that, again, if you were doing collage, like fabric collage, you could easily put fabric in here, bits and pieces of fabric, or doilies, or you know, you couldn't have a huge amount, but you could, it's deep enough to store quite a bit. It's just a really neat thing, I think. So there's that. And I think I might have missed, no, I didn't miss a layer. Or did I? I think I might have. I did miss one layer. So there's this layer, and then there's one more of the shallow layers. So you have this one that opens up into these smaller compartments like that. So you have two of those, and then you have two of those, and then you have this one, and then you have so you have this one, and then that one, and then the big one at the bottom. So there's more layers there than I originally showed you, but they're very similar on the two sides of the book, but yet they open a little differently. Anyway, it's called a Chinese thread book. That was a bit of a puzzle to get it figured out to be the size that I wanted it to be. But it's a pretty neat thing. Anyway, Chinese thread book. All right, and that concludes the show and tell portion here of all the stuff that I found as I was cleaning up and organizing. And I'm getting close to having this space where I am located right now. I'm getting close to having it organized where I can find all my stuff. Yeah. Anyway, it's a neat book. Okay, so let's talk about the Gnome holiday book. Some people would call it December Daily. I'm going to start mine at Thanksgiving, so it's longer than December. And I needed 40 days to get from Thanksgiving through to the first part of the year. And so that's what we've done. Put together 40 pages. I'm using I'm using 140-pound watercolor paper, not expensive watercolor paper, and it's not the best paper in the whole world. And 140-pound paper does not like to fold into signatures. It gets very irritated about having to do that. It wants to be flat. So anyway, I made the signatures. So we're going to look at that. So I made the signatures and temporarily have sewn them. They're temporarily sewn together. We're going to look here. So you can see the holes, and they are sewn together just with beading thread. And that's just to hold them together so I could have a better idea of how I want it to fit, the signatures to fit inside this cover, which I haven't progressed any further with. And so they are, I just put them together so I could measure and see just how I wanted them to fit. And I decided that they were too wide, and so on the Monday night stream what we did is I did not continue it on stream because I needed to be in a different position to do it. But what I did on stream was measure over. I decided I wanted them to be 5.5 inches wide. And because what happens is the front edge, the leading edge of the signature when you're working with thick paper, wants to creep out here more than I wanted it to do. And so I ended up marking and then scoring and then adding water along the score line that I had folded. So I put water on both sides of that score and bent it back and forth quite a few times, and actually use a bone folder to reinforce that fold so it was a really crisp fold, and then put water on that fold on the outside and the inside. And then it was about 1/2 inch, which it's easier to tear a piece of watercolor paper if it's 1 inch or more. 1/2 inch is a little frustrating, so you got to take your time. That's another reason I didn't do it on stream more than a couple of pages, because it's like, this is going to take way too long. But you'll get the idea. And so the water softens the fibers, and it allows you to tear those edges off, and it gives you this soft edge instead of the straight cut edge, which there's nothing wrong with a straight cut edge, but I like the look of the soft edges inside a journal. I like that look, and so the torn edges I think just is a really neat look. Hi Mary, good to see you. And so that's what I did. I tore those edges, but you have to use it make life easier, so much easier for yourself if you'll use water on the fold of watercolor paper. Softens that fold, and it lets you pull them apart a lot easier. Okay, so I thought what we would do today, I'm not going to sew them into the cover yet because I'm not quite ready to do that. But they are held together in signatures, but it's temporary. And so I thought what we'd do today is just play a little bit with some washes of color and just sort of randomly put some color around on some of the signatures. So I have some water, and I think we're going to go over here. I think it'll be easier for you to see. And I'm going to do this with acrylic paint for the background. I could do it with watercolor, but I'm going to do it with acrylic paint because then whatever I do on the watercolor on top of it, it's not going to lift it. So I'm just going to remove my pencil mark that says top and hope that I can remember. She says. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, my voice is still a little crazy. Oh, by the way, tomorrow is the VIP class. So anybody that is a VIP member, your information has already gone out in your email, so look for that. So we'll have our class tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. Okay, back to this. All right, so this is just a disposable palette. And I have an assortment of craft paints that were down about like this, and then I filled them up with water. And so I have a few of those out here. I always put a piece of tape around them. That way I know that they're washes and not real acrylic paint. Because if they're real acrylic paint and you go to dump this out on your palette and it's not marked, you're just going to get a big old huge mess. It's not good. So here's what we're going to do. I have washes of acrylic paint, and then I also have some high flow from the golden line. So we have some of those, and so I thought we would just play with this. And so I'm going to dampen this page a little bit. I just bought this continuous sprayer. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So then I'm just going to mush the water around a little bit. And then we'll see how these washes do. So I'm just going to open up some greens and some yellow. And all I want is just a little bit of color on these pages, just so they're not totally white. And these could be what it says on the bottle, and they might not. So I'm not really sure what's in these bottles. And so then I'm just going to mush the paint around a little bit. And the paper or the paint's gonna dribble over from one page to the next, and I'm gonna be okay with that. So all this is gonna do is just give me, it's gonna take away the whiteness of the page, the whiteness of the background. So we're just going to play around with that a little bit. I'm going to come over here, maybe try the other camera. Yeah. All right. So we have one. I went to Hobby Lobby this week for getting some supplies. May I just say, okay, this is going to be a rant. I'm just going to tell you straight up, this is going to be a rant. May I tell you that I am so disappointed in Hobby Lobby at the moment. Holy cow. What a disappointment in a store. I mean, it used to be one of my favorite places to go. But it is a drastic disappointment to me at this point. I don't know if it's that way to you guys or not, or if you even have a Hobby Lobby. If you don't have one, maybe you're lucky. They have decreased the department that contains any kind of craft supply. Okay, they have decreased it to almost where it is non-existent. Almost. They no longer, at least at mine, no longer carry distress anything. They don't. They no longer have tacky glue. okay? Tacky glue. How can you not have tacky glue? I don't understand that. They didn't have any kind of glue that was worth anything. Like I said, I don't know if it's my store. They seem to be restocking, so I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. But what a disappointment in a store. Goodness sakes. Anyway, I went up to, they did have the paper I was looking for, which was, I think, a miracle. And when I went to check out, the clerk said, "Did you find what you were looking for?" And I said, "No, not really." And then I'm like, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like, thanks. So if merchants think that people are shopping online too much, you know, it probably is a catch-22. You know, it's probably, I don't know. It's probably a catch-22 type thing. All right, I'm just not really paying too much attention to what I'm doing here. I'm just simply putting color on here, and if I get it too dark, I don't want these to be too dark. I'm going to do this and soak up some of it. I'm like, you know, what do you expect people to do if you don't even care? I mean, glue, tape, any kind of things like that. They don't have any of that now. I'm like, well, I'm not sure what you're selling. I guess what they're selling is mostly home decor. That seemed to be what they mostly had. Even in their fabric department, it was a horrible disappointment in what they had. So, I don't know. Where are you guys getting your supplies that you need? They didn't even have, Mary, they didn't even have any decent clearance there. I mean, like, their clearance section was just almost non-existent also. They used to have a really good clearance section, and then I guess they just decided that they didn't need to do that anymore. I don't know why. I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. You know, if they want you to support their business, then what are you going to do? Tell them to order stuff for you, and then maybe it'll come in someday and maybe it won't, you know? I don't know. I don't get it. So it was very disappointing. All right, why are you not? Okay, apparently this one has scabbed over. All right, let's move this around before it does something weird. These high flow paints, because these are an artist grade paint, you got to really watch that you don't squirt out too much paint at one time, because if you do, you're not going to be happy, because they are so heavily pigmented. All right, so I'm going to get dots and, you know, spillover coming through the stitching area. There's going to be all kinds of stuff that's going to happen here because of painting in this way or doing a background in this way that I'm doing it. But I don't want it to be too super pigmented. So that's why I'm doing that. on a brighter note, there is a store called Trader Joe's, which is more of a natural food, health food type of store, and we're getting one of those opening up where I live. So that's going to be nice, I think. Michael's around here has cut back so much. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy. I don't know what they expect. I really don't know what they expect of the clientele, you know. I don't know what they expect of the public. And it probably is just a byproduct of what, you know, the big online retailers have done. You know, Amazon has taken more and more and more of the share of the market, and Temu, and, you know, whatever else. I have never shopped with Temu. I've heard horror stories from other artists, and I really don't know, that I don't have anything to substantiate it, but I have heard from other people talking about how they will steal artist designs and things like that. And I really don't doubt it. So I've decided that I just wasn't going to shop with them. I guess it's my little protest against that. I don't know. Okay, so I'm just going to keep doing this, and if you want to just hang with me and watch, we'll do this one signature. I bought one of these continuous sprayers. I bought two of them. I think that was maybe at Walmart where I got them. I got two of them, and that's how they came. They came in packs of two. And so I got two of those. I kept one, and I have one that I'm going to send my 4-year-old great-granddaughter that was on the stream with me several weeks ago when they were here, because I got her something for her birthday, which hadn't come yet. And so I got those, and I think she's going to really enjoy what I got her. Anyway, I got the continuous sprayer for her. And you guys, I can just imagine what she's going to do with that sprayer. With her 1-year-old baby brother. And he's probably going to love it, but I just think it's going to be a riot to hear if he could talk, I think the conversation would go something like, "Mommy, make her stop, she's spraying me." Uh-huh. Can't you hear it? I'm really not using any color theory here about whether these colors will work together or whether they'll blend together or anything. This marks half the signature. Well, and I think the cool part, you know, it's such a double-edged sword with the okay, what is this? Titanium white. This is quinacridone red. Okay. We'll see whether this one wants to work. What was I going to say? It's a double-edged sword because it's really wonderful that you have the ability to shop online, all of us, you know. And they've gotten faster and faster. The retailers, particularly Amazon, has gotten faster and faster at delivering product, which is great. But if you know that you need the thing and you have time to order it and give yourself a couple of days, that's great. But there are times, I have to say, where I just want to go in, and it doesn't work online for me to do this. I just want to go in the store and I want to look at the stuff, handle the stuff, read about it, read the back of the label, before I place an order, because I want to see, read, there's times when, that's one reason I go to the hardware store, because there's still stuff at the hardware store. And I can go in and I can look at things, hold it in my hand, and get inspiration from it by going to the store and looking. You can't do that with online retailers. Yes, they give you suggestions of things. They'll say, well, you might also like X. And there's a part of me that appreciates that, and another part of me that is irritated by that, because I'm like, well, how do you know what I like? Okay, so we're going to keep, I'm just checking to see just to see how things are going here. And picking up any of the big puddles. I don't know. How do you guys, how do you feel about all of that? The online stuff and I'm not here to start a bad, I hate this or I hate that, because I don't. I'm just annoyed at what is happening in the retail space. Well, that's a lot of that, so we won't need much. I'm just annoyed about what's happening, but I think it's just part of, I think it's probably part of the culture right now. It's it's so good for people when they can't get out to be able to have access to products. It's really good for that. I don't know. I don't know that there's a good answer. I really don't. I would, if I knew the answer, it wouldn't make any difference anyway. You know what I mean? Wouldn't matter anyhow. All right. You get a lot of things from craft shows. I don't know that haven't been to a craft show, and I don't know when. I would love to be able to do that. I don't know that, I quite honestly have not done any of that since before I was taking care of Clausman. Yeah, crazy. Crazy. You get used, Mary gets used craft from D-Stash sales. Yeah, that's another good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea too, to buy from other people. But I honestly, I could not believe that they didn't have tacky glue. I don't know, maybe Aleene's has gone belly up. I didn't look online to see if the company was still in business, honestly. But I couldn't believe that you couldn't even buy tacky glue. That's like a staple, there you go. From someone's estate. It's probably good. Hi, Jane. Yeah, but it's so frustrating when the local people, the local stores don't, you know, don't have um, this. I mean, stuff like glue. Come on, glue. You know, and some of that stuff you can't, especially where I live, because it will freeze if you don't order. I mean, if you order it during certain times of the year, you know, sometimes they won't ship to your location because of the freezing issue. And oh, it's just, I'm telling you, I warned you it was going to be a rant. But I was just sort of stunned. I wasn't sort of stunned. I was really stunned. That's the first time at my Hobby Lobby has always been the store that had the most stuff, you know. I don't know. Maybe they're just resetting the store. Who knows? So it is a quandary, you know. It really is a quandary. Anyway, I was just frustrated about it. So the other night, you know, here's the thing: stores should have all the supplies I ever wanted. So when I get ready to go in and get stuff, it's there, right? They should be there to serve me. And also, my equipment should always work perfectly. And the other night, you know, quite honestly, I haven't done much garment sewing, that kind of stuff, in ages. And the other night, Wednesday night, Elton's daughter was here from Kansas City, and she spent the night, and she wanted, she knows that I sew, and she was going to make, it was really neat. She had a pattern for making a jacket out of a quilt, out of an old quilt. And she had somebody in her family had sent her a quilt, an old quilt, and it really was quite nicely done, honestly. But it was all hand done. But it was a weird size. It was like the weirdest size ever. It was too big for a lap quilt, too big for a baby quilt, too small for a twin bed. Not long enough, but too big for a lap, you know, a typical lap quilt. It was just an odd size. Beautifully done. It had prairie point around the edging. And Blick is down the road from you, Catherine. You are lucky. You are lucky. We're all gonna feel jealous now because Catherine has a Blick down the road. That is wonderful. That is great. And so I had been at her house a weekend ago or so, and we had looked at the pattern, and she had made a mock-up of it by using like an old bedspread, like a chenille bedspread type thing, or it was chenille from something, and she had made a mock-up of it, and she's used to garment sewing. She doesn't do a lot, but she does some. Anyway, she does some garment sewing, and so she was familiar with techniques and stuff. She was a little uncertain about, you know, because cutting into this quilt that she was not going to use on a bed, and so it was like, well, she could fold it up and keep it in a closet. Nobody knew where the quilt came from. And so she could do that, or she could turn it into something that she would wear and enjoy. And so she decided she'd wear this, you know, make it into this jacket. and enjoy it. And she wanted to take advantage of the prairie points and have those at the bottom of the back and the fronts. And so when I was at her house, she was asking me some questions about it. And I said, well, you know, the thing I would, because you only have one, like on a back piece on a quilt, you just get half the back on most patterns. And this was an online pattern, so she had to print it off and cut it out and assemble sheets of paper just to get the back, the half of the back, and I think it was half the back and one front, you know, and then you'd flip it over or fold the fabric in half in order to get your whole back and that kind of thing. And so my suggestion was that she would add paper and make the complete back, and then make the other front and cut out 2 sleeve patterns and lay it all out before she would cut into the quilt. Because that way you can really see, because you're trying to make the pattern do what you want. It was a very graphic pattern, and it's an old one. It was blue and white, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was beautifully done. Whoever did it, nice job. Kudos to them. And so anyway, she had the pieces cut out and the sleeves and everything cut out, and she had done, I think she said she did that, you know, made complete pattern pieces and so forth. And she did that, had it all cut out, but there was something she was a little concerned about. Oh, it was bias tape. The pattern had used bias tape to bind the seams, or to finish the seam, cover up the seams and that kind of stuff. And she was a little unclear about when you, in the sleeve in particular, they had you sew the sleeve seam and then press the seam open and then put bias tape over that seam and then sew down 2 edges. It wasn't bound like a bound seam. It was sew down the bias tape over the 2 edges, and which would show through on the sleeve, which wasn't a big deal. But you got to a certain point in the sleeve as you're trying to sew inside the sleeve, and it becomes real tight and difficult to be able to do that. And so we talked about different ways that she could manage that dilemma. And I said, well, you know, the easiest thing to do is to use my serger. She says, oh, you have a serger? I said, I do. And the easiest thing to do is just use the serger, and you know, the seam is already sewn, and so now you just put go over the 2 edges, the 2 seam edges, and just sew those. So take off the bias tape that is giving a problem, and just sew over that, and it just binds the seam allowances together, and it's all good. She goes, oh, it's a great idea. Let's do that. And then, because it's been so long since I've used my serger, don't you know that when I went to change the thread and that kind of thing, the serger would just decided it wasn't gonna work. And I'm like, things should just work, even if you haven't used them in 5 years. Don't you agree? Things should just work. Yeah. Well, it didn't agree with me. The serger did not agree. So And don't you know, Claus Man was my sewing machine and serger tech, which is what one of the things he used to do is he worked part-time at a sewing machine store, and then after he left there, then we did sewing machine, and we only repaired baby lock sergers. We didn't do any of the rest of them. And so that, it was just so annoying, because it's like, it should just work. It should just work. It should not be a problem. It should just work. Right? Oh, shoot. Anyway. All right. I'm going to see if my heat tool is plugged in, which it probably is not. Let me plug in my heat tool, and we're going to see if we can help these pages get dry. Okay, let's see if we can encourage this just a little bit. So hopefully you can see, you cannot control what this is doing, okay? You can't control where the paint's going to go, especially because it's very thin, and I'm doing it in booklet form. And when you have stitching holes and you have pages nested together, they are going to, the paint being thin is going to run through the holes. It's going to run between the pages. It's going to seep under there. So you can't control any of it. And that is part of what I love about doing this. I love the unpredictable nature of this. And I'll show you one of the things that I really love about it here in just a second. If I can find the journal that I wanted to show you. Okay, I found it. But if you keep the paint very, very thin, that is conducive to keeping these, allowing the colors to do this and be serendipitous, and also to some degree somewhat symmetrical as you close the pages and smash them into each other. And then I'm just going to continue soaking up any excess that I find. And but see what neat things you get when you smash the pages together. Now, you can avoid some of this symmetrical thing by taking a second signature if you have it ready, and rather than closing the pages on each other, take another signature or another page and smash it down on the wet paint, and then you're going to put, or just take one page and smash it down in that. Then you're going to transfer that excess paint onto one page in a different signature. And so you end up not having this symmetrical quality happening, but I particularly like it. And besides that, there's going to be plenty of stuff stuck in this book, so it doesn't make any difference. I would like for it to be not too bright, which, you know, It will or it won't be. This page is going to be a little bit bright, and so this is going to dictate some of what happens on this page, probably, because it is so bright. Thanks, Mary. So I'm just giving it a shot of heat to kind of encourage it. But if you don't like the serendipity quality of this happening, then you know what? This is not your technique. This is not your thing. If you don't like this serendipity, let's see what happens, no attachment to the outcome, then don't do this. Because you literally cannot control what's happening. I tend to like things like this. I didn't used to like things like this, but I do now. And I have liked things like this for quite a while, actually. Now, if I wanted to, I could take these signatures apart and I could shuffle the pages, but remember that I have torn these edges of the front edges of the paper after I stitched the signatures together. I went through and tore each page to make it so I didn't have quite so much of the creep factor at the edge. And so if I took these apart and realigned the signatures to mix up the pages a little bit, that is probably going to affect how this leading edge looks. So there's just a lot of things to consider. Okay, so for example, this is another place. This shows you a little bit more how this is done. Now the difference in this particular signature, or this, because this is a one signature book made from watercolor paper. This is done again with the acrylic paints. This has had rubbing alcohol splattered on it. So if you take some rubbing alcohol in your hand and splash that on it after the paint has set up just a little bit, then you're going to get these interesting marks in the paint because it's going to cause the paint to move away. So in this case, what I did, this is watercolor paper. In this case, what I did was I painted on one side of the paper, the watercolor paper, and then when that was, I think that was pretty dry, then I painted the opposite side of the watercolor paper. So I had two pretty different looks on the two sides of the watercolor paper, and using this treatment of splashing alcohol on it. So here the paper was done before it was torn apart. Okay. So I was playing with the difference between warm and cool colors. So all warm colors on one side of the paper, all cool colors on the other side. This is the center of the book. Okay, like that. And you can see there was a little splashing. There was a little splashing or transfer of color right here. And I didn't even tear it too well. And so there is that. And then this, what I was doing here was, I didn't even realize I had this in here. This is painting with the dropper and acrylic ink. And so that was drawing with the dropper of acrylic ink. Anyway, so there's that one. This one I did at a similar time. And the backgrounds are all done the same way. I was a little more free-form probably, but they were done on one side, painted on one side with the acrylic washes and some alcohol dripped on it. and then use that as the backgrounds for drawing mandalas. And what I love about that, the mandalas were drawn, I drew them, and then I went in with Inktense pencils and did the shading, and then activated the Inktense pencil with a water brush. And so depending on what was happening in the background, it gave this kind of ombre look to the mandalas because of whatever was going on in the background. The Inktense pencil is very translucent, and so it will not cover up what's in the background. So it takes advantage of whatever was happening in the background. So that's what will happen with Inktense pencil. If I decide to use Inktense pencil in this little book for this Christmas holiday journal, it will have a similar impact. But what you have to think about for doing something like that is, if you're doing people, like, I'm trying to get a hold of my sheet here. If you're doing people like these little gnomes, if they have any flesh tone, or, their noses at least will show through. If they have any flesh tone on them, you have to kind of keep that in mind with, like if you put a gnome here, for example, just as an example, and you have this color right here that goes across the face, and you're using an Inktense pencil, it's going to show that right in the face. So you have to think about that ahead of time. If you paint with acrylic paint, of course, the acrylic paint is usually opaque enough that it will make that not visible. Anyway, part of what the whole point of showing you this is what I love about the idea of washes for the background is that you can create some effects in the mandala that you couldn't get any other way. You can also do that same thing on a piece of watercolor paper, make the whole mandala, as long as you haven't gotten too crazy with the outside details, and then you can cut the mandala out and mount it on a different piece of paper, or mount it on a canvas or whatever, which I've done quite a few times. So there's that one. Some of these are not done, like this one. These first two, I just have the Inktense pencil. This one too, but I haven't done any work to speak of. There's very little work done with the gel pens and none with the paint pen. So the jury's out as to whether I will ever go any further with these. But I'm also reacting to what the basic background is of the acrylic washes as to what I do with the mandala on top of it. So I'll draw it the way I want, but then what colors of Inktense pencils do I use? And so if you bring in things that are opposite on the color wheel, you might get surprised as to what the Inktense does in reaction to the background. So this is so heavily warm toned. If I brought in a strong green or even a dark blue or something, it might have a totally different look and not maybe the one that I want. By using warm tones in the Inktense pencils, it works with the background instead of getting surprised by bringing in greens and things like that, which might not look the way that I wanted them to. So here's another one. This one has there's greens in the background on this page, and so I was able to bring in some of the greens, some of the teals, and utilize that. All of these mandalas are hand drawn. So this one I was reacting again to the background, which was primarily yellow and green. And so that was the color. Thanks, Julie. Hi, Joni. I mean, Joan. Sorry. I saw the J and assumed it was Joni, and it was Joan. This one has not had any of the shading done on it. You can see the difference between this one, which has the shading around in here, and this one, which has just been, I'm just drawing in with the different pens. And it has a little bit of color added in those kind of striped areas, but not nearly as much as it needs. And I started doing the trim around the outside and then stopped. So this one has a long way to go. This too. I don't know if this was ink tints that I used on here or not. It looks like it might be Prismacolor, as you can see the texture of the paper. I really don't know what's on this one. I'll have to do some investigating on that one. Do some testing and see. If it's Prismacolor, then I can go in and use the odorless paint thinner and blend that out if I want to get rid of the texture, or I can just leave the texture from the paper in there. I don't think that's ink tints though. And so here are the other pages, just so you can see. There was another one that we did. Many of these I did on stream with you guys. And yeah, so you can see I let the background kind of determine the color scheme. This one hasn't had much of any pen work done on it. None of the gel pens or Posca. And this was a test page I was doing for something for a class. So this one is just a test. Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? And that's started. And that one, let me see. This and this are the same. And this one was a transfer from using one of the patterns from one of my Mandala pattern books. You can see it. And then starting using the ink tints. But that's just such a plain colored page. That's going to take some work to get that to come up to be what I like. This had, in this journal, this is a lesson for you. When I bound this together, I had the tails on the outside of the book, and then I put beads on those tails of thread. And then, so the strings of beads on the tails were about this long. Okay? And then, when I went to use the book would constantly roll on the beads back here. It was the most frustrating experience ever. So one day, you see how short those tails are on those threads? So one day, I just simply cut them off and put some glue right there. I'm like, nope, I am over that. So I did exactly what I had here. I had these long tails of binding threads, and I put beads on these. So if you are going to add beads to your book binding threads, you either need to, if you bind them like this, add another thread down here at the bottom, or add another thread at the top. Put your beads at the top or the bottom, where they're not going to interfere with you working in the book. Or do like this. Keep the threads until the end. And when you're all done filling in the book, then put your beads on there. But you got to be absolutely sure that you're done with whatever you're going to do in this book. Put your beads on afterwards. Or instead of starting in the middle to bind your pages together, because I started in the middle I went from the outside to the inside right here. Went to one end, came all the way down to the bottom hole, came back in here, and then went back through the middle hole. One tail on each side of this one long stitch, and knotted it, double knot it, 2 or 3 knots. Instead of doing that, start at the bottom or at the top. And so just start in one of the end holes instead of the middle hole to do your binding, so that you'll end up with these tails at the bottom or at the top of your book. You will be so much happier, and you can thank me right now for that information because if you do that, you will be so happy. And if you don't do it that way, when you are working on your book that has beads in the binding area, and you are working on your book and it is sliding around on those beads all the time, you will do what I did, and that's say bad words. You will say bad words. You can trust me. And this is, I think, about a full sheet of watercolor paper. Let me see. I'm trying to see how many pages it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pieces of watercolor paper that were 15 by 7.5, so that I could end up with a square book. Basically square book. Anyway, so there's that. All right, you have any questions about anything? Let's look at this little, we'll look at our little signature that we painted. I was killing time, in case you couldn't tell. It's getting pretty dry. It's getting pretty dry. We'll pick, we'll go on the outside of this page signature because it's really quite dry. And let's put a gnome on it, okay? So I'm going to use my tracing paper pattern because it's already tracing paper. There's no point in... These are cleaned up a little bit. Those are the downloads, which you can find the links in. You can find the links down in the description box below the video. So we're going to put this on here. I need to get my painter's tape. If you have any questions, put them in all caps. And we're going to trace this little gnome on here. I'm going to take most of the sticky off on my shirt. And I'm just going to put him down here in the corner of this page because I think he looks cute there. And I'm going to have this other piece of tape ready in case I need it. How am I going to color the gnomes? That is a really good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to it yet, Dorothy, because I'm making it up as I go. I'm thinking in terms of using acrylic paint, but I don't know for sure. Probably acrylic paint. We could do some in acrylic paint. I might do some in Inktense. I won't be using watercolor because I am not as good with watercolor. So I have put a piece of, I'm not sure where okay, I did that. Okay. What did I say? I don't know. I just flat sidetracked myself and lost, oh, piece of graphite paper. That's what's under here, with the graphite transfer part down. Bye, Mary. Okay, so once you know that it's going to transfer fine, I'm going to add a second piece of paper or tape. And then I'm just going to quickly transfer the rest of this guy. And then I'm going to show you some ideas for adding patterning and so forth to the, I mean, you can do anything you want. It's your journal. If you decide you want to do a journal like this, I don't know if I got his nose. I did. Okay. You can do anything you want because it's yours. When you use graphite paper, and I'm using a stylus to transfer, because I like, some people will go over this with a pen or a pencil. I don't like doing that personally because I like the lines on my pattern to stay true and not to get confused with multiple lines being drawn over the top of them. So that's why I use a stylus, because it doesn't put anything down on top of my pattern. The downside is you have to be a little careful that you don't push too hard and wreck your wreck your pattern, like poke holes in it and stuff. This is the bottom of his foot. This is his bottom right here. Or, no, sorry, that's the bottom of his shirt. This is his leg, the line for his leg. This is his bottom. So you're getting to see his bottom there. Here you get to see more of his body. I see I left a little bit of a line out there. They're just little made-up creatures, and they don't have to be perfect. So if you want to change something, change a line, change something about the perspective, you can absolutely do that. Okay, now to check and see if we got all the lines, let's see, how can I show this to you? Let's go this way. To check and see if you got all the lines, lift up your pattern before you take it off. Just lift it up and look to see if you got all the lines transferred. And I think we got everything. Some of them are really light, but I can still see them, so we should be in good shape. You can always come back then if you needed to with a pencil and do a really light, very light line if you needed to fill in something that maybe you didn't get, like the side end of his mustache. I'd lost a little bit. Okay, so we have our little first little guy, and so there he is sitting at the bottom of the first page. If this is the first signature I end up using, then he'll be sitting there on that page to greet me. Okay? My intention with this book is on whatever the first page is going to be the title page. So this will have the words for the title page about, 2024 or 2025. I'm in the wrong year, 2025. And then from there, everything will be a 2-page spread. So that's one reason I made the pages as different as they are, and yet they go together. So that's what I did on that. Okay, so that's my thought process on that. You are going through this with me as I am thinking it up and making it up as we go. All right? So let's talk about embellishments on the edges of pages and around the pages, because I like that. I think that embellishing around pages is a good thing. So we're going to take a quick look at this, and then I'm going to head out because we don't have very many people hanging around today. I don't know where everybody is, but yeah, I don't know what's going on with the stream universe anymore. There are moments when I think, I don't know why I do this. Oh well, such is life. Okay, I'm just closing up paint bottles. Maybe I've gotten to the point where I've used up everything I have to offer. You never know. You never know. It's a crazy, crazy world we live in. Okay, so for example, just some that was just random thoughts, Barb's random thoughts. This is an old journal, 2012. But just to give you some ideas, this things to go around the edges of pages and that kind of stuff, this was from a coffee sleeve from somewhere. The clock change is throwing people off. Well, and our clock changes this weekend, so that'll happen here too. Probably worthwhile observation. Thank you for that. Some of the other things that you can look at are things that you can draw, just making up patterns. I'll show you some more examples of these things in a second, but this is all stuff I drew and then added ink and maybe watercolor, I don't know, probably colored pencil in these, probably ink tints, but these are all borders that I drew and added. So if you need to fill up space, you might start a library or some notes of just little designs, because I mean that could not be simpler. That is some vertical lines, some horizontal lines, and a donut that I made to look like candy. This again is these were stamps, and then I just embellished around them, not even very well. And then I drew some more ornaments. These were stamps, I think. I'm pretty sure they are. And then these were ones that I drew like those, and then acted like those ornaments were hooked onto words and things like that. This is paper napkin, so you can use bits of paper napkin to be borders. And that's what I did. Those were just little pieces of paper napkin. This was a piece of paper napkin. This right in here was just a continuation of this Christmas card. So, and that I think is probably watercolor, but it could have been acrylic paint. And this is a Zentangle design down here. So that's just a Zentangle design done as a border. That doesn't take long to do. The stars in here were all just things that I drew and filled in with paint. That could be too, Dorothy. Okay, this page. This kind of design here, this page I clearly was bored that day. That came as a direct inspiration from Joanne Fink's inspiration, Dangle Designs, and that is what this is. Direct inspiration from here. When you cannot think of how to do things, get a book or go online and look at what's out there and copy it. It is okay to copy things. It's really good if you give credit to whoever you're copying from. But trust me, if we, I mean, I know there are people online that disagree with me about this, but I feel really strongly about this. If I didn't want people to be inspired by what I'm showing or doing, I wouldn't put it out there. So I think if it's, once you put it online, you have given up the right to control what people do with it. You know? And not everybody agrees with me on that score, and we each have our own opinions, and quite frankly, they all stink. You know? I'm just being honest with you. But we all have our opinions. But you can't control what people do with what you show them. You know? So, my thing is, if you find something you like that's been presented online, you're making this for yourself. I would never sell this book. I would never sell what I've done as my own original idea if it wasn't. So, there you go. That's my opinion. And I'm sticking to it. Anyway, that's where this came from. Now, you would never look at this. Sorry, my device decided not to work. You would never look at this and mistake it for Joanne Fink's work, because she has a distinct style. You would never mistake that for her work. But it is my rendition of that, and it is very heavily inspired by her work. So, there you go. This was a stamp. So was this. So is this. This is stencil paste put through a stencil. Easier said than done to not have the stencil go into the girl, because I put the background on after the girl was done. Let's see. You can do pen and ink borders. That was just something I made up based on this. Okay, this came from a Christmas card. And so I just extended that and tried to draw pretty much what I saw here in that Christmas card. What else? Yeah, so you can cut Christmas cards apart and do that. This is more like that Zendangle type thing coming down the binding area. This over here was, let's see, what was this? This was just being inspired by whatever this was down here. This was something I cut out and then added to it. And then I just made it smaller coming up here. This is more of the same thing down here. So I think that must have come from a Christmas card or something. This came from another coffee sleeve. If you take those cardboard, corrugated cardboard coffee sleeves, you know what I'm talking about, like come on a Starbucks mug or cup. If you take those and carefully take them apart and then very carefully peel them. It's handy if you get more than one, because sometimes they peel real easily and sometimes they don't. But if you can peel it real easily off of the cardboard sleeve, then you thin it down to where you can glue it into a journal or something. So that's a great way. Just peel it carefully. This is just done with markers. Anybody can do that. That's scribbled on a diagonal, getting smaller at the top. Plop a star on it, put a trunk on, and then you got something that fills space. Let's see. This is from a stencil. This is all stenciling back here. That's a Diane Reevely stencil. So is this. Napkins, a single layer of paper napkin used over text paper like dictionary paper is really neat because you get the text to show through. But you can create some great borders and fill space. If you don't have anything to go on that page that day, then just fill it up with colorful something. Hi, Shoe. This little stack of birds right here, I mean, I've seen those many places. Can't tell you exactly where that came from, but I just made that stack of birds because I saw it from somewhere, someone, sometime. Nothing unusual on this. It helped on these pages. This was a paper pad. It was cardstock, and it was called Ledger, I think. And so everything had a ledger theme. So it was nice because it already had color and visual texture, not physical but visual texture. And I added an extra piece of the same paper pad to make the place where I punched the holes sturdier so they didn't rip out. This right here is one of those, it's old time roller. There were some little roller things, you know, roller stamp things. Okay. Oh, my computer is going to be ornery at the moment. So they're little roller widths. I don't know that I even kept them because they were so frustrating. The ink in those did not want to dry. Ever. Ever. And if you didn't roll them straight, they would do weird stuff, you know. Anyway, but they were a little roller stamp, and they were neat, great concept. They were meant for bordering things. Yeah, well, the ink just didn't dry, which is one of the biggest problems. So you really needed to emboss them to get the ink to get dry. And you can see here, if you don't go straight, that's what happens. That's why I ended up putting some other patterning in there, because I don't know what happened. I fell off the edge of the page probably. So yeah, I don't think I kept those because those were so frustrating because they just didn't dry. You can also bind other things into your journal. You know, you don't have to have them attached to anything. Just punch some holes and sew them in, glue them in. In this case, just put them on the binding rings. What else? Just make up some patterns. I mean, I was getting lazy by the end of this book because I was tired of working in this book. This whole thing was a collage of paper napkins, a couple of different napkins with some dictionary text on top of it. Nothing unusual on there. There was a little bit of stenciling here and there that I did. I could have done that under the napkin and then put the napkins on top. I'm not sure. This is a great border technique, okay? And that's wrapping paper. This is wrapping paper I've had forever. I think I finally threw it away because I was so tired of it. But it had all of these, what looked like candies and cookies, very separately done on this whole roll of wrapping paper. Cheap wrapping paper. It was terrible for wrapping anything. It was great for this. One day I just sat down and I just cut out a whole bunch of the motifs. And then I glued them in, probably with glue stick, and then went around them with some lime green, probably Copic marker. But that's a really good border type thing, is use stuff from wrapping paper. Thanks, Joan. Here's more of the Zendangle idea. Those are really fun to do if you're really bored, or if you just want to play around with it and see what you can come up with. This was something I drew too, this little stripy thing at the bottom. So these things, the things that were down here had a thing to grow out of. But I enjoyed the words, so I put words on there, and then you just add all the little stuffs. Another part of a card that was somebody sent that was on a postcard or on a Christmas card. This is one of my favorite hymns, so I put it on there and then just sponge painted around it to kind of make it disappear into the page a little bit. Calendar, and pretty much that is it. But we'll look at these. So we've looked at this already. This is Inspirations Dangle Designs by Joanne Fink. These are really, I mean, there's lots more in this book than, there's not a lot of pages, but there's a lot of ideas in here, more than just borders. There are things that you can go down the side of the page, across the top and the sides. You can add little motifs like these little birds, aquatic things, hearts, words, alphabets. So there's all different kinds of things in a book like that. Here's another one. This is Inspiration. So this is same author, letters and patterning. One day I was on jury duty when I did this. I remember that. This is all my notes about the courthouse, going to the courthouse, and how long I was there. I had to get there at 7:50 in the morning, and at 5:30 I finally got to leave there. Yeah, there's a whole story behind that. Anyway, you couldn't take anything with you. Couldn't have a phone. Couldn't have a you couldn't have a tablet. Couldn't have a phone. Couldn't have, 90% of the stuff you couldn't have. Like, you could have a piece of paper, because this came from the court. Okay, so I had that. I was waiting to be selected for the jury or not, and I could have a pencil, and I could have this piece of paper. And so I sat there while I was waiting and just doodled stuff. I think I got to bring maybe this book with me. I mean, but nothing else. Couldn't have your purse. You could have your keys, and that's it. They were really strict about everything. And so I just would draw a line and make a pattern in it. Draw another line, make another pattern. And then I gradually, this is where that little design with the little candies in it came from. Just doodling in there. Yeah, that was a miserable day. Although I got some stuff done. And so what I did was looked through this book and just tried different design type things that were in this book, just to have some, it's the whole thing of killing time, and I hate killing time. That is just horrible to me, to waste time like that, but I surely did that day. Get a color book and look at the different things in a color book. Now, a lot of the things in here are not useful for what I'm doing, but you could take little designs like this, and if you just repeat it, the little things across the top of the page, or like this, just circles, and then holly leaves and holly berries. But any of these designs in here you could turn into a border. Borders will make your design, make your pages more interesting. I mean, that's a good design. You could make that into a small tree. It doesn't have to be a big tree. That's a Zentangle pattern. Take any of these ornament designs and do that kind of thing. Okay, some of these are really finicky, very, very meticulous kinds of designs, and yeah, I'm not going to do those, but there's a bunch of those that are useful. You can take other color books. Johanna Basford's, this is her Christmas book. Again, you can look through any of these. I know they're very light But like those package designs, take any of those and make a border with those, or put in the corner of a page. Ornaments, again, either put them in the corner of a page, hang them from words, hang them from pictures. You can do all kinds of things. Ideas for houses. So you can just have fun with color books. I mean, you can probably find a whole lot of this stuff online as well. Leaves, greenery, what else? I mean, this, you can make this Christmassy or not, depending on whether you wanted to. You can draw Christmas flowers like poinsettias. I mean, for example, you see that design right around there. I was looking at this gnome book, and you can, this is an old book that's no longer available, I know that, but if you had something like this, or I'm sure there are things on Google Images that would be, could be useful. You know, you could draw little flowers across the bottom of a page, or going up the side of a page like this. You could draw a plant going up the side of the page. And if you don't want to go to be this fancy, you don't have to be this fancy. Those are patterns from the gnomes that I did a long time ago, years ago, with oil paint. Anyway, so you can get some ideas from places and books that aren't Christmas, because maybe you don't want just Christmas. Maybe you want something that's more fall oriented or just pattern oriented. You could put a border of bugs on it, you know. Oop, shouldn't have shown you that. I just think some of these are so cute. Anyway, so you can do that. If you happen to have art books about imagination, this is Journey of Imagination, James Christensen. You can look at these, again, not for Christmas ideas or border ideas as such, but you could take you know, like this is a pumpkin. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if I can hold this up. See the pumpkin right here? So you could take that idea, that shape of that pumpkin, and you draw that a whole bunch of times, or you draw it once on tracing paper. Okay, draw it once. And then use your graphite paper, and you can transfer that pumpkin over and over and over down the side of a page, across the bottom. Yeah, the Gnome book is a great book. One of the things that's wonderful about this book is color combinations. So if you get stuck for color combinations, even if you don't look at this figure, if you just look at the color combinations, or the shading, the way the shading is done, to make that shape right there look like it's fabric that's hanging down. You can do that with colored pencils easily. Here's more ideas, is using fish. You get a fish for a border. You know, you can just, or plants, you can find a plant, inspiration for a plant. So don't ignore things just because they seem to be, that they don't relate to whatever it is that you're doing. Like, for example, look at this little egg situation going on down here at the bottom of the page. I mean, that's funny. Is it Christmassy or holiday-esque? No, but that's funny. I may have to draw that in my book just because it is just that. It's funny. So you can go through things that don't relate to the subject that you're working with. And you can still get all kinds of ideas. Okay? So there you go. Those are some ideas, again, for what you might do with your book if you decide to do it. If you want to work along with me at all, you might want to put some color in your book on your pages. So in my book, I have 4 signatures. I have one completely background ready because I find it difficult personally to come up off the just total white page. I find it much easier and much more inspiring if I have some color in the background. So that's what I'm going to do, and I probably will use the same set of colors that I have out here to do all the rest of the backgrounds in random order just so they have some cohesion, but I might add a couple more. Who knows? You don't know. I never know what I'm going to do. Honestly, I just go by what feels right at the moment. Okay, that's going to do it for me today. And I think I'm back here on Monday. Let's look. Yes, I will be back here on Monday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern. Oh, I do have a funny thing to tell you. Last night, I couldn't figure out why Elton wasn't home. It was like 6 o'clock and he wasn't here, or 7 o'clock he wasn't here. I'm like, I wonder what in the world happened. He must really be busy. 8 o'clock he finally comes dragging in the door, and he said, I was trying to find you on YouTube tonight. And I looked at him and I said, it's Thursday. And he goes, yeah, but for some reason I thought you were streaming tonight. So he'd been looking for me online from 6 until 8 and couldn't figure out why he couldn't find me. Yes. What are you going to do? All right, I will be back Monday evening. The time will be changing for us this weekend, and so we fall back an hour. Okay, so do the calculation, look on the world clock, whatever, so you know when to show up. Okay, I'm going to go. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, week, whenever you're watching, whatever you're doing. I hope you, thank you first of all for watching, and I will see you when I see you next time, hopefully on Monday evening. Until then, as always, remember to get creative today because you know it's easy, and I'll see you before you know it. Bye for now.